What do you do if you have knee pain that is stopping you running, but you've been attending physical therapy and you're not getting any better? This is exactly the situation that Bridget found herself in when we met a few months ago. Bridget desperately wanted to get back to running half marathons. However, she'd been having knee pain that she'd been seeing a physical therapist about. In spite of the fact that she'd been going to physical therapy for almost 5 months, she was still completely unable to run. She'd been diagnosed with IT band pain and runner's knee, which is a more general way of saying patellofemoral pain, which is pain on the back of the kneecap. She was told that the reason that she had runner's knee was that her glutes muscles were weak and her running technique was putting more stress on those areas on the knee than it should. So the plan was to make the glutes muscles stronger, make her legs generally stronger, work on her technique so the knee didn't hurt so she could get back to running. However, whenever she tried to run, the knee would hurt, and she was told that if the knee hurt, it meant she still wasn't strong enough, the technique still wasn't quite right, and she had to hold off and not go back to running until it was pain-free. Now, 5 months into her rehabilitation, she's feeling really frustrated and disheartened because she feels like her glute muscles are stronger and her technique is getting better, but she still can't run and the symptoms are no better than they were when she started. If anything, they're a little bit worse because now it hurts a bit when she goes downstairs and she's a little apprehensive even to go down the stairs to take out the garbage from the second floor apartment she lives on because she's worried that she's going to be making the knee pain worse. And this situation really sucks for Bridget because running has always been her way to help manage general stress and improve her mental health. It's been her kind of escape, her me time that made her feel more balanced. She's tried other things to substitute since she's been unable to run, particularly swimming, but she found it a bit boring and she just wasn't really that into it and she didn't get out of it what she got out of running. When we first spoke on our free call a few months back, I asked her about this situation and she said that she really felt like she was going to end up being one of those people who said, I used to run, but then I had to stop because I had knee pain. And that this was always going to be a problem for her, and she would never get to a place where she could run as much as she want and forget about the knee pain. She was also worried that it was just going to get generally worse and start impeding on more aspects of her life, such as going downstairs. The problem that Bridget was having is that she'd fallen into this gap in the healthcare system, which is really common for runners to fall into. The healthcare system, when you're looking at traditional physical therapy, chiropractic, sports doctors, surgeons, and sports physicians, this kind of thing, is very good when people are really badly injured and they need quite a lot of help just to get going again, just to get moving without pain. But the way that traditional healthcare views recovery from an injury, like a running injury, is pretty much in two phases. You have the rehab phase, in which you are trying to get back to running in some form, and the problem is the pain. And then you have the performance phase, where you have resolved the pain, that's no longer an issue, and you are trying to improve your performance. The problem is that there's a huge gap between these two things. So if you think physical therapy might get you to the point where you can run 5 or 10 miles a week, that's not running 90 or 100 miles a week that you might want to do if you were training for, say, an ultra distance event. And for Bridget, unfortunately, she wasn't even getting that far. She wasn't able to really run at all, in spite of the fact that she could do most of activities of daily living without any issue. She could do all the strength training that she'd been given in the running technique work. She still was unable to run without pain, and she'd been instructed that if you get pain when you run, you must stop. And she'd fallen into this gray zone, this gap in the healthcare model that doesn't really help people like this, and lots of injured runners fall into it, where they're a bit too good for the things that physical therapy and chiropractic and athletic therapy, that kind of thing, they're a bit too good for what that can offer, but not good enough to go back to full training, to use training apps or PDFs off the internet, or even go into coaching and focus on their performance, because they're still limited by the pain, but they're not so limited that the traditional healthcare can actually help them very much. And this phase of rehab, I think of it in 3 phases, right? So you have rehab in phase 1, and then you have performance in phase 3. This middle section, that kind of gray zone, I call that the recovery phase. The goal in the recovery phase is to get back to full training. So you still have pain, but it's not so bad that you need to be in a clinic having manual therapy done to you. But it's not so good that you can do whatever you want. So you need to have your training slowly and systematically built up to the level that you can return to full training. So in this three phase model, you would have the rehab phase, in which the goal is to get back to running in some format, the recovery phase, in which the goal is to get back to full training, and then the performance phase, in which you don't have pain anymore and the goal is to improve performance. Now, one of the key ingredients in that recovery phase is running. In the recovery phase, a big part of it is that running is the rehab. You see, while Bridget has been injured for the last 4 or 5 months and hasn't been running, she's been working on getting her glutes stronger and improving her technique. These are good things to do, and we have good evidence that these things do help resolve things like runner's knee and ITB pain. However, because she's been completely rested from running, the IT band, which is the thing that's hurting, and the back of the kneecap, which is the other thing that's been hurting, have been completely rested from the impact stresses that they would have experienced if she were running. That means that those specific tissues have become weaker and less resilient, less tolerant of stress over the last 5 months. So she may have stronger glutes. She may run in a way that has better technique, that puts less stress on her knee, but her knee can tolerate much less stress now because she's been resting for so long. Those tissues have become weaker. And this is why it's so imperative in that recovery phase that you are running in whatever amount you are able to do, even if it's a teeny tiny amount, because you need that stress on those tissues as an adaptive stimulus in order to keep the resilience that they have and force them to adapt and become more resilient so that you can put more stress on them, as in more steps, more running, as you recover. And so this is what Bridget and I talked about. And when she decided to enroll with us, we got her to run in the first week, but we got her to do a teeny tiny amount. So we took a 30-minute workout, of which most of it was walking. So walking has a little bit of stress on the knees, but not very much. Then embedded into the middle of that, we had 6 minutes of run walking. So run for 1 minute, walk for 1 minute, repeat 6 times for a grand total of 6 minutes of running. A very small amount, but sometimes can be too much for people if their injury is particularly irritable. So that's what we got Bridget to do in her first week. Now, had that run or run walk irritated the knee and produced what we call red light pain, if you're familiar with the pain traffic lights, then we would have regressed the running. So we would have said, okay, you're not ready to do 6 times 1 minute run, 1 minute walk. Rather than doing run walking, we're going to get you doing pogo hops or skipping for 30 seconds once or twice a day. If that's too much, we get her to run on the spot for 10 seconds, morning, noon, and night. Really, really tiny amounts of running. And what this does is reintroduce that impact stress to that IT band and the back of the kneecap so they can start to adapt to it, and we can get a gauge on how much stress they can actually tolerate at this point in time. Fortunately for us, Bridget, when she did that run or run walk, didn't have any issues at all, actually no pain at all. So then what we did is we got her to run or do the run walk every second day. So we gave her a day off in between. That resulted in 3 run walks a week, and we'd add a couple more minutes of run walking each time and then review how it felt. If overall she wasn't getting any red light pain, so she was only getting green light pain, which means a tiny amount, or orange, which means it's enough so you can feel it, but it's not so bad that it's getting worse. As long as that's all she had, we kept adding more minutes. Gradually, as weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 passed, the run walks gradually engulfed that 30-minute walk, so there was less and less walking and more running. When we experienced a bit of an increase in the knee pain, we regressed the running a little bit and went back to what we'd done over the previous week and did that again. If she had milder symptoms, but they were still pronounced enough that we didn't feel confident to progress her on, we would just plateau her training at the same amount for a week. And if she was having no pain at all, which she sometimes was, we would actually increase the rate of progression so that we went at the pace that the knee said it was okay with going. This allowed us to gradually progress, slowly but surely, the amount of running that Bridget was doing until she was doing 30 minutes of continuous running, which took us about 4 or 5 weeks. During the second month, we slightly increased the volume of continuous running across the week, but not too much because we have to remember that in that first month, she had ran a lot more than the previous month when she hadn't ran at all. So we didn't want that cumulative load to exceed her adaptive capacity. So we added just a little bit more volume to those 3 runs, maybe even a 4th run each week, just continuous zone 2 running, easy pace, nothing too hard, but still monitoring with those pain traffic lights, regressing when needed, progressing faster when able. In this way, running is the rehab in this recovery phase. It is applying stress to the injured area in the amount, in the in the intensity and the frequency and the duration that it can adapt to. Not more, not less. And we use the pain traffic lights to help us understand if we're in that adaptive zone. After a couple of months, the back of her kneecap and the IT band are getting tougher, more resilient, and less sensitive. They can handle more stress, so we can run further and we can finally start to run faster. This is where we started to insert a teeny tiny bit of intensity. So short intervals in zones 3, 4, and 5, where we have Bridget run faster and see how the knee reacts to that. Now, because we're increasing the speed, we're increasing the stress. So we're being very careful about this in case we flare up the pain. Fortunately with Bridget, because she'd been slow and steady up to this point, we were able to layer in those interval workouts without too much difficulty. And by the end of that 3rd month, Bridget was doing pretty much regular training runs in terms of intensity. So she might do 30 minutes of sprint intervals where she's sprinting as fast as she can for a minute and then jogging for 2 minutes and doing like 10 of those. Because we'd also slowly but surely increased the volume of her longer run at the weekend, we'd actually got her all the way up to running an hour and 45 minutes, as well as those slightly higher intensity runs earlier in the week. And this had been the missing ingredient for Bridget, and it is often the missing ingredient for a lot of runners. They get good rehab in terms of manual therapy, strength training, good advice, technique work, mobility work, but they don't get specific guidance on how to actually progress the running and use the running as the rehab in that recovery phase. And it's so vital that a lot of runners will get stuck in that first phase and never get back to performance because they don't have this systematic approach to progressing their actual running during the recovery phase. When I met Bridget 5 months ago, she was doing most of the right things, but she felt completely hopeless. Her physical therapy wasn't really getting her anywhere, unfortunately. She wasn't running at all, and she actually found that the knee pain was getting worse, and she was worried that she was going to have to quit running permanently, and that knee pain just might be a long-term part of her day-to-day life. Now, she's not having any knee pain. She's returned to full training. She is not even worried about the knee. She goes down the stairs without thinking about it anymore. And most importantly, she's got running back in her life again. So she can enjoy the mental break, the relaxation, the stress relief that running affords her without worrying and being anxious about the knee pain all the time. And the key ingredient here that she was missing is using running as the rehab. It's extremely important. So if you feel like you've been doing rehabilitation elsewhere, maybe it's with a physical therapist, a chiropractor, and you feel like you're getting good care, but you're not getting anywhere, and you're not getting any specific guidance on how to plan the running in order to use the running to build up and get you through that recovery phase, then we might be able to help. That's exactly what we specialize in. So if that sounds like you, and you want to have a chat, just click the link in the description, book a free call with us. We'll have a chat and see what's going on and see if we might be able to help you.